Hi, Phil Aston here from Aston magazine, and here's one I know many of you have been waiting for. And it's a classic album review, and the album is Deep Purple and Burn. In this video, I'm going to go through how I first found the album. I'm also going to go through the tour with the program, the singles from the album, the cassette, the CDs, even the songbook. But here we go with Burn by Deep Purple, 1974. This was a big year for Purple and for me. I was 15 in 1974, and Deep Purple were going to be the first band I ever saw live in my life, with Elf supporting them, featuring Ronnie James Dio. I'd got into Deep Purple really heavily the year before, through Made in Japan, going around to my friend's house after school. Who Do We Think We Are? Obviously Machine Head and Nick Rock, and some of you who visit the website will know that story. Now, that had a lineup change, but that didn't bother me. All I knew was there was going to be a new Deep Purple album. I was more musically aware at this point, and as long as Richie Blackmore was there, who'd become my favourite guitarist at this point. At school, people were into Clapton, Jimmy Page, Tony Iommi, Dave Gilmour, Steve Howe, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, etc. But to me, Blackmore, there was something about Blackmore, his image and everything about him that just set him apart. And this album was about to do that in spades. I think that it was my friend Paul, his older brother, bought the album first. And I went round to his house after school, and I'd seen the review in Sounds where they said the album starts with the meaty chords from Richie Blackmore. And he put it on, and Burn comes out the speakers. That, to this day, you know, is my favourite rock song with my favourite riff, Burn. To this day, it's still the most exciting rock song for me that's ever been put down. And I mean, let's think about it as a song. What did it have? It had a riff, an absolutely gorgeous, perfect riff. And all the best songs with riffs in those days, you have the riff, and if you were a band, you got a riff that was that good. You didn't want to waste any elements of it, so you didn't just come straight in as a band. You did the riff, then maybe a drum roll. Think about Smoke on the Water. It builds up, and Burn, a bit of a drum roll. You know, again the riff plays out, and then everyone storms in behind the riff, and we're off and running. And you just think, wow. I can always say with Deep Purple, track one, side one of any album they've ever done. Now, if there's ever going to be a Deep Purple compilation that's only put together, track one, side one is the one to put together, I think. But anyway, back to Burn. So the riff has hit me, and then we move into the first verse. And how many bands would actually put a drum solo behind each line of the verse? Because if you listen to what Ian Pace is doing, as Coverdale sings the first verse, he's literally playing a drum solo behind the singing. It's absolutely stunning, and it had sci-fi lyrics. Tick, you know, it was absolutely superb. You know, again for a teenage, you know, kid, it wasn't about war or love. It was about God knows what it was about. But the people laughed until she said "burn," and what a line, still is. And then we go back to the riff. We got a chorus, which is just like one word, so you can just punch the air. And we have a middle eight where Glenn Hughes comes forward, and the way that, because obviously live he's kind of screamed the last phrase, didn't he? But on this, it's just a soaring vocal harmony that comes over your head. And then we're back to the riff, and again. And when the guitar solo arrives after the riff, of course, let's keep playing that riff. It's a guitar solo that's not like anything else that Blackmore had done to that point. All the other guitarists, in my young mind, were obviously still very much into the blues and R&B in their background. Blackmore now headed off in a kind of neoclassical vein that nobody else was doing. No one did it, you know. Jimmy Page to me now sounded like 12-bar blues guy. I know it's unfair to say that, but compared with Byrne, the guitar solo, it was just stunning. It was everything you wanted. It was like Highway Star on steroids, but with more stuff involved. It was just a complex proto-speed metal song. But we're not over, are we? Because we go back into Glenn Hughes again with the middle eight, and you think, well, we're going to go back to the riff, and we don't this time. This time the riff doesn't return, but we just go straight into lashings of lush Hammond organ from John Lord, which just is like it just pulls you along, and it's just a thrill. It's just a ride of a lifetime, and great again, classical, you know, bits going all over it and everything, and then we're back to the riff. Proper, and then we're going straight back into the last verse, another drum solo behind it, what sounds like, and then we're done, and we finish in 6 minutes. 6 minutes of rock perfection, which put Deep Purple at the top of the highest mountain in my view on what it was like. The first one I bought, as you'll see in a moment, was the cassette, which is a slightly different running order to the album, and the next track was the single, Might Just Take Your Life, which has got some, again, great Hammond organ. It was probably, at the time, a kind of like, not quite as the energy of Byrne, but of course, quite quickly, very quickly in fact, you realise that the vocals, the vocal delivery by Coverdale and Hughes on Might Just Take Your Life is absolutely stunning piece of British hard rock phrasing. You know, Coverdale's confidence, considering he'd been working in a boutique until fairly recently, is just phenomenal. And of course, Hughes didn't need much encouragement, did he really? But it works. The Coverdale Hughes vocal harmony thing in Deep Purple, it's such a shame that they've never done that again, considering they're such brothers of the road, that they've never done that. But a wonderful song, and again it's lightened up again by John Lord's fantastic solo at the end. Live, of course, you know, Blackmore's guitar was much more power chordy on the track itself. Lay Down Stay Down is another speed rocker, really. Wonderful delivery by Coverdale, great song, wonderful guitar solo, and again this was in the live set. Just wonderful phrasing, you know, and just wonderful production. Some people say the album sounds a bit trebly now. I think I've grown up with it so long, I can't really, sounds fine to me. And then we have Sail Away, which is such a clever song, isn't it? I remember being at the school disco, and us blokes at a school disco were always trying to get rock music on, because it was all, you know, soul and disco then for the girls to have a dance. And somebody got the Byrne out and put Sail Away on, and the girls carried on dancing, and I think, wow, the girls are dancing to Deep Purple. But again, it's Coverdale's voice on this, and Hughes, and that riff is such a interesting riff, and the synth solo, it's such a varied album. It's just perfection. We're 4 tracks in, and it's just amazing. There is nothing so far that I've got tired of. Nothing. U401 opens on side 2, different on cassette, but opens on side 2 with a drum pattern showing that pace, you know, is not going to be left behind, on really showing his personality on this album. And again, at the time, this was a track that didn't gel with me straight away. Live, of course, it became something completely different, with some of the best riffage from Ritchie Blackmore, I think, ever. But the vocals here, not going to take for granted, you know, Coverdale and Hughes, they sing with such passion about being done wrong by, you know, a relationship. They sing with such passion. It really is. I mean, my top 3 Deep Purple albums, number 1 is Byrne. Number 2 is Man in Japan. Number 3 is Come Taste the Band. And everything after that is fluid. But I just loved this album. And I still do. it's just brilliant. What's going on here is I've got like a boogie piano solo in it, but the guitar solo's got such wonderful mid-range from Blackmore, and it just boogies along. Every track to me just delivered. It wasn't what you expected. They were slightly different. It was real. So I say at the beginning, it was like neoclassical, speed metal, proto, whatever, but it's also very bluesy, but not in a way that's looking backwards. It was looking forwards, and it just was perfect to me, just perfect. And then we have probably the other classic track on it, which is Mistreated, which again took on a totally different personality live. But this is Covered Owl on his own, and this is Covered Owl's was his signature song for many, many years. And it's a brilliant song. I remember him saying he couldn't write a blues song because he was from Redcar up there up north, and nothing really bad had happened to him, but he knew about bad relationships, etc. And it's just wonderful. And the guitar solo in the middle and the guitar solo at the end, and you'll know from the story at Burn that there were different mixes of this. When they put more vocals on, Blackmore vetoed it and put his guitars back. But it's just wonderful. 7.5 minutes of an absolutely epic song that was also taken to different dimensions with Rainbow and Ronnie James Dio. The last track, A200, was seen to many as being like a bit of a step down, and the critics didn't quite like this, and because it was an instrumental, and but I love it, and it does sound a bit like Doctor Who in places, but the reason why I like it is because it features one of my favourite guitar solos by Richie Blackmore ever. And if you look up on this channel, my favourite guitar solos ever, this is one of them. I just think the way he comes in with that bend on the guitar is the emotion that he's phrasing, and the notes just like pour, like water going down the stairs. It's just like so fluid. It's just absolutely amazing. Really, really, really was. So I'd heard it and I'd bought it, and I moved away from cassettes quite quickly and bought this, my original vinyl. And later in the video I'll go through all the different versions of what I recommend you should do. And so the next thing really was to see them live. I think it was about £1.50, I think. And I was quite a way back because I'd ummed and ahed about going to see them, because I've been quite young. I was going into Birmingham on my own. I was a bit nervous. It's all around the time of the troubles and stuff. But I went, and I managed to get a ticket. And I'd never been to a big concert before. And Elf came on first, Ronnie James Dio, and then a few lights, and I thought, wow, this is good. But of course, when the main act came on, probably not lights so much now, but when the main act came on, they had more lights. They had loads of dry ice, and they just started with that crash ending. And all the purple dry ice was moving everywhere, and then Blackmore appeared, and they just opened with Burn. And it was just amazing. And this was a new band, a new album, a new set list. So they literally went open with Burn, Might Just Take Your Life, which was the single, Lay Down, Stay Down, and Mistreated, which is a totally different animal. It opens with him doing that guitar. Blackmore's guitar playing in this period is unique to any period that you listen to Richie Blackmore. You might extend it to 1976 with Rainbow Rising, perhaps. But to me, 1974 was a very specific guitar sound to me. And that came up after Mistreated. They did Smoke on the Water, and John Lord introduced the band. And then they went into a song that was going to feature John Lord, Ian Pace, and Richie Blackmore, and that was You Fool No One. It starts with the keyboard solo, so John Lord can do his kind of classical motifs and stuff. And then it comes in with a staccato type riff from Blackmore, which shows where the song could have been on the studio album. And the version on Live in London, which was recorded for the BBC in concert, is the best version in capturing that particular way he played that riff. And he would he would borrow that riff again for Still I'm Sad in Rainbow, but he never played it as well as he did at Kilburn. Well, the rest of the tour and Birmingham, where I went. But that's the only recording I've heard where it captured it that much. So Live in London, it's part of this story. It's literally just a few months later on. But the guitar solo in U401 was just Blackmore on his own. Everything dies, kind of pulls back, and Blackmore just does this shredding way before anyone else is doing shredding. You might say that Jimmy Page had touched on it with Heartbreaker, but what Blackmore does with those really fast triplets and stuff, and this particular and sliding inspection down the strings, which no one else was doing, and the guitar, his guitar sound was totally different to Made in Japan, totally different to Made in Europe that came later. That guitar solo in U401 off Kilburn is just Blackmore on fire. I think once we had people like Ed Van Halen and the 80s shredders coming along, Blackmore just thought, well, I've done that. I don't need to do that anymore. I've done it. But at this point, in 1974, no one else was doing that. No one else was doing that at all. And then they did Space Trucking, which wasn't a brilliant success for Mark III, I must say. And then we're going down. The Don Nix track was the actual encore. So So after that, when I came home from that gig, I just played Burn, and Deep Purple Mark III were the Deep Purple for me. Everything about them, the way they looked, they were at the top of the game. The album was like, they were the best-selling artists in the world, in America Billboard chart. The album was really high up in the charts. And let's look at the cover. I mean, it wasn't a gatefold sleeve. And you would have thought with a new lineup, considering every Deep Purple album had a gatefold sleeve, they would have done that for this. I mean, they would do it again for Come Taste the Band. But they didn't. It was a single sleeve. But I always thought this was magical as a design. And I just think that was just brilliant as a design, really. And the rear of the album, with the candles, because I think at one point Simon Robinson was been in touch with the candle maker. He'd still got the moulds to try and make them again, but I don't think they ever happened. But the way that the candles were being blown out, and the pictures of the band were just kind of like rising out like spirits through the smoke, and I just thought they looked so cool. They just looked so cool. So to me, it was just perfect album cover, and I still think it sounds absolutely, fantastic, to this day, and I absolutely adore it. I've bought several versions, as you'll now see. In fact, let's just do that now. So let's dive in, and I'll show you my memorabilia for Burn, and I'll see you on the other side. So here is a look through my collection of Burn items. I actually started, the first version of Burn I ever had was the cassette version, and that was because back in the day, 1974 was the last year that I bought cassettes instead of vinyl records. And for my generation, a lot of us didn't have our own record players, and our kind of parents had bought us cassette players, not even recorders. And so pre-recorded tapes was how we experienced new albums. And you got very little information. You basically got the track titles, and as you can see here, look, the track listing was different to the album. Burn, Might Just Take Your Life, Sail Away, instead of being fourth place on side one, was position 3, and the outside ended with U401, and side 2 started with Lay Down, Stay Down. And that was it. That's all you got, nothing else. So, as I moved away from that and was allowed to use my dad's record player, I bought the same year, 1974, the year of release, my first vinyl copy. And this is the original vinyl copy. Look, you can see the little creases along the top, as this is the version that I played and played. And it's a single sleeve. And you would have thought with the new lineup they would have gone out with a gatefold sleeve, as every Purple album had been gatefold really up until this point, apart from the first one, Shades. But they didn't. But I always felt that the cover, the artwork, the candles was just brilliant. I just thought they all looked like rock gods. I just loved it. You know, the fact it's all vocals sung by David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes, except Mistreated, which is sung by David Coverdale alone, and the track titles and all the rest of it. So this is my original vinyl. It's probably a bit dusty because it hasn't been played for a while on vinyl anyway, but this is the one. That was my first copy, and I wouldn't get rid of it. I think you can still get copies fairly easily. And then this one's from the 90s. No, sorry, it's from the 80s, this version. And the reason why I bought this is because I was living in London and I couldn't bear to be without this album. So I bought an extra version to have in London, and because I didn't want to take my original with me. I wanted to protect it at home as it was then. So this was the other one I had. So this is from the 80s, and it's in a W.H. Smith's inner sleeve, which cost me 10p. And so this one, I don't think this one has probably been played that much at all. So that's my second vinyl version of Burn. And then my third one is this one, which my son Lee bought me. And this is a remastered version, and it came out only about a year ago, and it's actually on orange vinyl. Purple vinyl perhaps would have been better marketing, but I think someone had already done that. So this was the HMV version. So that's my vinyl versions. I know there are other different ones, but that I don't have those. So the next thing for me to show you, I think, is the tour memorabilia. I have the badge, which I think cost me 10p, Deep Purple on Tour 1974, and then the programme from UK Tour 74, which I think is quite rare now with this cutaway aspect. Official programme, and on the inside you've got the discography, which obviously goes all the way up until Burn, and then the singles, obviously with the latest single as well, and then the advert that was used a lot in all the music press showing Burn itself, because it had only just come out. This is May 1974. The pictures of Ritchie Blackmore I think were unique, because these pictures don't appear very often on Facebook or wherever else. And there's John Lord. I just thought they looked like rock gods. I'm literally 15 years of age, and in the centre spread is this all the equipment they use. And for David Coverdale, put down the whole of the PA system for him. And there's Ritchie, and the management and all the other credits. And then Coverdale. Again, these are pictures you don't see very often. Absolutely superb. And then Glenn Hughes, Ian Pace, advert for Marshall Amps. And in the last page is the support band, which was Elf, promoting Carolina County Ball on Purple Records, and with some overview there of the band Elf, who of course later on would be connected with Ritchie Blackmore and Rainbow. So the other thing from this period is the single, Might Just Take Your Life, which I think sold about 3 copies, and here they are. But the main reason why anyone would have bought this is actually because the B-side was, at the time, not from the album, which was Coronarius Reddick, an instrumental with some superb guitar playing from Ritchie on that. The other thing from the time, you can hear an aeroplane going overhead at the moment, is the songbook. And the songbook had some different photographs in it. All the Purple albums had songbooks, some are rarer than others. So this time you could see they were outside the Starship, and Deep Purple were enormous. But some of the photos here you've probably seen some of these before, but these are all in the songbook, and a lot of my friends bought the songbook, even though they didn't play anything, just because they wanted that. It's mainly just the music then, and there is a centrepiece, I think, with more pictures. which again, some of these have been seen before, especially this one here, Richie. I think that's all the photos in that, I think, yes. And that's the back of that, is the picture of the reverse of the sleeve, but without the credits. So for CDs, the first one I bought was this one, which is the No Nonsense Affair, but I thought it sounded okay. But this is like when CDs were very basic. I thought it sounded okay, but there was no, you weren't going to get any information apart from that. So the one that I recommend is actually this one, which is the 30th anniversary edition, which is obviously long since past now, which includes a remaster, remix, rare B-side, plus a booklet. And this is when booklets were crammed, thanks to Simon Robinson's involvement with this. So this is highly recommended. So I'm going to go through this quickly, because this is the one I would suggest you go and buy. I mean, you won't be able to see that, but this is packed. Now, there was a double vinyl version of this, but this came out at the time when I just was not interested in vinyl, and it's a 2 LP set. And the words to this would have been printed on the inner sleeves to get all this on. But this tells the full story. Look at that picture. That's one of the most iconic pictures of Richie Blackmore ever. So wonderful stuff, absolutely brilliant stuff. And there's the tour poster as well. There was even a scarf, I think, actually available from the merch stall at the time. And so what's on this? Well, obviously the whole album, but you also get some bonus tracks, which is remixes from 2004 of Burn, Mistreated, You Fall No One, Sail Away, and obviously the one you really want is the 2004 remix of Corona's Reddig, which sounds good, but the remixes are very subtle. And the other version I have is the Japanese CD, which is on, I think it's on the Warner's label, because that would have been their label over there. So I'll just, as I've shown you everything else, I can show you this as well. So you get the bit of blurb, and then the actual, and the lyrics in Japanese. And there it is on the Warner's label. So that's everything relating to Burn. Oh, before I pass over onto this, the only other thing I would suggest is essential is live in London. Now, there are lots of Mark III live stuff out there, as we know, but there's something about Richie Blackmore's guitar tone during this 1974 which sets it apart to me, and his best sounding year of playing the guitar, and it was recorded live at Kilburn for the BBC. And I'd also highly recommend this as well. I mean, some people say that the mix isn't brilliant, but the guitar sound, the guitar solo on You Fall No One, the shredding that he does on this is just superb. So I know this is, I could have made a separate video for this, but I think it's important for Purple fans, Purple musicologists, that see this was done literally within months of the album coming out, and I think it's an historical document. Gosh, you know, look at the price. I think I paid about £1.50 to go and see him. Amazing, isn't it? But this is well worth it. So, and I feel it's relevant to Deep Purple. So that's all my copies of Burn that I currently have. I don't really need any more, because if you're just starting out, this one, the 30th anniversary version, is the CD version to get. And as I said at the very start, Burn just makes me feel fabulous. To this day, every time I play it, it just makes me feel positive. It's just got everything in it. It ticks every single box for the perfect rock song for me. And I don't get tired of hearing anyone play it, whether it's Whitesnake or in fact, I'll do a video on the top 10 versions of Burn and where to find them. But it's absolutely up there with me. One of my favourite albums of all time, and my favourite Deep Purple album. So thank you for watching this, and thank you for your patience waiting for me to do it. And I can't say there might not be a part 2 as well. But I've really enjoyed doing this, and thank you so much for being part of the Now Spinning magazine journey. It's great having you here. I thank you for subscribing. Thank you for becoming patrons. Stay safe, keep spinning those discs, and I shall see you on my next video.